And welcome back to Together We're Better, a show that celebrates wonderful humans in the world, connecting through music and the arts, and finding ways to bring the very best of ourselves out. Today we welcome Chad McCullough, a great friend of mine, excellent jazz trumpeter. There's evidence right behind his head. You'll see an entire display dedicated to mutes, which only some individuals in our world would dedicate space to. Welcome to the show, Chad. Thanks for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fine in this new world of COVID-19, which is, of course, impacting artists everywhere. And I know one of the ways that we're managing it is to find ways to record music and to do anything we can on these digital platforms. This is, July 4th just happened. What would you normally be doing? What's July 4th, 2019 look like for you?
Yeah, I canceled some tours. I had to cancel trips and clinics and it's like summer camp, teaching at summer camps, and it's 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 unlike any other time.
Yeah, I know for myself, I was sort of holding on to summer camps as that last thing, like, oh, maybe we'll have this figured out by, August. We'll be able to sort of have these things. And of course, we just got word for the camps that I do that they'll be canceled, of course, for the summer. And then now we're looking at the September sets and we're canceling that. And most of the major organizations in the Bay Area have just canceled through January. They're just like, we're shutting it down until then, and we'll revamp and figure it out. So you teach at two universities, University of Wisconsin-Madison and then DePaul University. Any word on what's happening in the fall for them?
No, everybody's just kind of waiting and doesn't want to make too big of a jump forward. But I think there will be some in-person teaching. I know at DePaul we're going to have our jazz combos. I think the ensembles are going to be meeting, but with a lot of health and safety regulations, we're going to be in like the larger, they'll be rehearsing in the performance halls, basically. Rehearsal.
Oh, okay, so you'll still have the opportunity to like coach like a jazz trio or whatever it might be. You'll still have that capacity.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's good because I know one of the biggest things for me, like what changing from being in a classroom to being just through a screen is just the energy and the dynamic of actually being able to listen to each other. Because you and I can chat like this, but even here there's going to be a little bit of delay. We'll probably interrupt each other a few times just because of the way the sound travels. But managing a group, it's impossible because you just can't have multiple voices at the same time. And so what I had to do is I would have 60 kids on my screen and they're all muted, and then they would all play at my request, and then I'd give them feedback visually, like, lift your bow arm up, or it looks like your wrist is down, and I would just kind of go down the top 10 things that most kids have issues with. I'm like, make sure, if we're playing in G major, that F sharp is it's leading to the downbeat. We got to lead to the G, whether or not they were playing it or not. I mean, they might have been playing Xbox, and just had like a picture of themselves playing. Like it was such a different reality. So any in-person teaching I think would be really helpful, but like you mentioned, like we've got to find some safe ways to do it. At least with the small group instruction, you can have at least the social distancing component of it, which is beneficial. So speaking of those small groups and the things that you do, what makes a great jazz trio? Like when you're playing professionally or collegiately, like when you're coaching folks up, what do you try to look for?
I think with anything, when I'm putting a band together of any size, I want musicians that are going to be a certain thing. Like they bring something to the ensemble. Like I can find a drummer anywhere who's really good, especially in Chicago, in New York, and in Europe, wherever. But I want a certain person that shows up with something. Same with the saxophone player. Like I want a certain thing where I feel comfortable playing with them, where they feel comfortable playing with me, and maybe we come from the music from like opposite directions, but we're going to show up in that same space and be ready to go. And so, like, I think that means listening. I think that means like conceptualizing how you write. It means conceptualizing how we phrase things together, like any music, like we bring our shared experiences to the table. So the thousands of hours you've listened, you show up with that in your brain, and it's no different for style.
One of the capacities to listening, I think it means being willing to be flexible. Is that part of what happens there? Because you are going to, if you're going to meet each other and maybe you have mutual respect for each other's ability and playing capacity, but then if it's like, well, this is, I'm Chad McCullough, I play this way, that makes it really challenging for other folks. Or is it that your identity is so strong that it inspires others to emulate and copy it? Or is it the dichotomy of two personalities working things out together live? Or
I think it's more that. I think it's like the split-second decisions. Like I heard a really fascinating thing by Quincy Jones one time where he was talking about jazz musicians having to assess people right away that you don't know to understand if you have an instant connection with them. And, like you could show up somewhere and not even speak the same language as people, but as soon as you say, okay, we're playing this tune or whatever, you instantly know who you can trust and who, like, is listening to you and who you can listen to. And I was in Macedonia at this time last year actually, and come to think of it, July 4th, 2019. When you asked that, I was thinking, what did I do? I was playing a gig in Macedonia, and I didn't know these guys. I just showed up at their little session, but it was really fun because they listen to the same John Coltrane records that I have, and they know the same Miles Davis records, and they know, the modern language. They know this stuff, and so even though they live half a world away, we have all of these common shared experiences that we can dig into as soon as we start playing.
Music in the schools is that it's a binding component for our culture, just in the school community. We can work together. Together we are better. The ensemble thrives when we support each other, when we listen, and when we just kind of realize that, we have connections beyond just these sort of narrow identities of who we are and who that person is. Certainly, at least it gives them the tools where if they want to work on it, right? So you're a new dad, and it's you can't really prepare to be a dad until you are a dad, and then you get to work at being a dad now, right? You get to just get better at that. So I think having music and art in schools at least starts to develop the option for tools to widen the path of connection and communication later on in life, which of course we see doesn't always happen in our adult world now that we are those adults. There's a local conductor. He does the West Bay Opera, and he always starts every opera production with, he feels that all politicians should be either in an orchestra or in a chamber ensemble or part of an opera production so that they can learn how to communicate, work through things, and then once they've done all of that, then they can run for office. But that should be a prerequisite for holding office anywhere.
The guy, Ryan Cohen, that produced my new record, he's got a young son, and I was telling him that we were expecting, and he's like, dude, you're going to be fine. You have booked a tour and been a band leader, and you have dealt with jazz musicians. You're fine. It's and honestly, I think I've changed more diapers on the road than I have at my house.
Career has been incredible. You've toured the world multiple times, of course, going through Europe with Bram Waiters, and then also Tunnel 6 through Canada, and of course then you've done stuff throughout the United States and other places, so you've seen a lot of cultures. You've been in a lot of interesting corners of the world. You've been able to collaborate with a lot of people, and as you mentioned, you've had your 20th album produced, and the title is Forward. What's the inspiration for the title, and sort of where you are now that your first album, you were probably in your 20s, and here you are nearing your 40s, and you've had a bit of a life. So what does Forward mean to you?
To be fair, for the video, I'm not as old as you.
It's true. It's true. I am the elder statesman in this particular conversation.
Yeah. With that title, it was kind of one of those things of I was throwing it around before the lockdown, and it just, it's my first record that I've done ever that only has my compositions on it. And so I thought that was kind of fitting. It's a step forward in I don't know, concept that way. I feel like now it's got all of these societal and contextual implications that, honestly, I didn't really think about. But now that, it's suddenly like, oh, wow, this is a lot heavier, that like this is coming out in the fall. That's a long way and a lot of stuff to deal with between now and then for all of us. And so it kind of took on a different meaning. And
Well, I mean, but the premise of just moving forward, I think I definitely, and I don't know how many folks have this, but when I was a kid, I thought, okay, I'm going to get my degree, I'll know things, I'll be ready for life, right? And then what I've come to realize is that your degree prepares you for a lifelong learning experiment as you just hit different phases of your life. And, I mentioning just what's happening, of course, right now. We're going through some incredibly big things, or we've been going through the big things, but many people haven't been aware of them. And I think that's the challenge, right? Is that more people are becoming aware of the struggles that we fundamentally have. But we can move forward. I mean, if we choose to, right? We can. We can also take our marbles and go home. I mean, we have that option, and we can
see, like, who does that with their marbles? That's been eye-opening. And who takes the challenge head on and goes, wait, this is serious. Like, we need to make sure that human beings are, we're all in this together.
When I started throwing this together, I was thinking, well, one of the foundational elements of just my little orchestra program, right, just our little kids at Castellaro, is that we share our knowledge, we lift each other up, and then we all thrive. So let's find people that are doing that, because we know that's happening. There are people who are urging to be inclusive and urging to support and to celebrate and to enhance the experience of all of us, not just our little circles. And I would imagine you've had a lot of opportunities for that, just because you've been in a lot of places. And through music, we often just connect across, politics and religion and ethnicities. Like, it just happens because it's a big mix of us, and also on the other hand, there's also so few of us. We're just always so happy to meet a musician and play with them. Like, the focus becomes the music, not the differences. So I would probably say that another advantage to just everything that you've done is just this sort of world awareness of what's happening, as opposed to this sort of narrow, singular awareness of your own little pocket.
Well, and I think especially with jazz music, like, it has traditionally been protest music for Black Americans. And I feel like as an educator, and yes, like as a collegiate educator, that's part of my job to make people aware that this is not just about playing these notes on this harmony, but really what the history and the struggles of the musicians who have been the geniuses of American music, like what they have gone through and why these have been created, what the art has been created. And it's interesting when you travel around the world playing music with people that don't understand that, because I think that that's an important thing as an American. And whatever that means, like there is struggle inherent in saying that, in dealing with what we have dealt with as a history. And, when you understand that in your music has a different meaning to it, and not to say that I do, for example, like we're white kids from the Northwest, like, it's a very different upbringing from people that, live in the south side of Chicago. It's very different. And there's no way that I can ever claim to understand that. And I think through studying the music, at least, and actively sharing that music, we can get closer and try to understand and try to, be a human being in the world,
Like, that message is probably something we've all tried to emulate, but there's so many conditions to it. There's a lot of be human within the context of what you're comfortable with.
Just the way people are dealing with each other it's not cool. It's, and everybody's in their head about all this stuff.
And I also think a part of that is, we are isolated, and then we were already having a problem with social media. Right? And here we are. We're going to be using YouTube for this, right? I'll release this on a platform that could easily be edited and fixed to sort of spread an idea, right? But we were already like when we were living in a population of groups and friendships where we at least had some people to connect with outside the universe of Facebook. It was already an issue. And I don't think isolation has helped. I think isolation has made it more important than ever that we have to find ways to connect and we have to find ways to communicate. And that's why, like, whatever we do in the fall, we have to keep the electives going. And like Santa Clara County said, you can't teach electives; it spreads too much. It's like, ooh, yeah, there are essential things necessary to keep the health of our community going. And I fundamentally believe the arts are one of them. And even when times are good, it's hard enough to get all these things budgeted for, right? And we know that there are going to be some challenges here, but the things that the students do in the classroom demonstrate the best of humanity when their effort and their gratitude and their support of each other. And it's San Jose. Like, we have everything that has ever been on this planet is in my classroom as far as backgrounds. Celebrate it within the context of the classroom, but I know that as we leave the classroom, we deal with other things in the hallways and other things in our families and other things in our city and within our state and all those things. And it doesn't always carry through, and we just but at least we have a chance at it. And if we get rid of that, then I don't think it's going to help matters any. And just the more music, the better. The more music, the better.
Like the culture of a music student. And I say, like, you and I are in this music student realm, right? Like, we study, we listen, we emulate, and we have to do it with other people. And that lockdown has, you and I both have made videos, and we're trying to, like, play with people and pre-record stuff. And it's cool, but it's not for example, right, 2 days after everything locked down, I was supposed to go to Europe to tour Bram and my new record, and we obviously couldn't. And then we started making these duo videos, and they're fun. It's awesome. It's just great to play with Bram, who I've been working with for 10 years, and yet at the same time, it's 1,000th of what it should be, and so, like, we crave that experience because it filters all of our listening and all of our studying and all of our, like, just living into, like, a present moment. And there's no way you can substitute that for anything. Regardless of if you want to be a professional musician, if you're trying to get better, if you're just wanting to play this song with some friends, like, that's it. That's all we have.
And I know that when I walk into my classroom that every child can be successful and every child can be has a pathway that can be controlled by their efforts and their energy. But I'm also fully aware that some of those kids are going to have endless resources. Some are going to have some resources, and some of them are going to have to triumph through the situations that either life has given them or that they were born with. And that's where I also would love to just be able to be back in person, because in the classroom, we can get all the kids to believe that they can.
The biggest thing as an educator, or the biggest challenge has been to really own up to loving the process right now. And not only the process of teaching, but the process of just waking up every day and playing long tones on the trumpet for an hour or whatever. Like, I don't have a gig. Well, I would much rather just go have coffee and watch cartoons. Like, why not? But I have to work. I have to. And it's the process, and it's that, like, part of your spirit that you have to kind of take care of every day, And when you're 18, maybe you don't know that yet.
Like, focusing on the process, just like, this is the work it takes and this is what you get because of that process. And then you have all this freedom of expression, or you can apply this sort of mentality towards other subjects or...
Yeah, and having the time to better yourself is also scary. Like, suddenly everyone has the time to better themselves.
Yeah, no excuses, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but also some excuses, and I think, like, that's there are days where I'm like, I don't want to touch my horn. I can't do it. I can't do it right now, and I can't beat myself up on that. Like, I can't. I need to take a break. Like, mentally, this is so challenging that it's like, okay, tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, in practicing, like you have to make healthy choices, right? Because if you're practicing in a frustrated state of mind, you're not going to really get any better. So you do have to be mentally well and rested. I know a lot of my students, they're trying so hard that they do themselves a disservice because they stayed up too late trying to get all that homework done and practice. And they didn't actually get better, and then they wake up without all the resources necessary for a productive day. But we also have to be kind to ourselves. We have to respect the fact that there are times in life where things are challenging, and it's okay to step back and reflect on that.
Yeah, I think that, practicing, I started to get a lot better when I realized how to not practice out of fear. That was a big one for me. And I still slip into it, of course, but to not be fearful when you're practicing has been really, really helpful.
It was like, oh, well, do we know what we're doing? And the answer is, we're learning. That's not like the question's irrelevant. Like it's not even a question you have to have. Like it's just, but we have it, and then you can either validate the question and say yes, I know what I'm doing, and have too much confidence to the point where you're not learning, or no, I don't know what I'm doing, and then spiral into this like state of depression for just get rid of the question, and then it doesn't matter.
Because the question's only internal. That's it. Like, nobody else cares. Nobody else is asking, does he know what he's doing? They're here to enjoy the music.
Yeah, so again, focusing on the process, focusing on like the music that's being made. And for me, well, here's another thing. So being in isolation, like the joy of playing a Beethoven string quartet, I mean, it's great music, but it's more of the musicians that I'm getting to play with, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm getting to play this with you, and that's what makes it interesting, beyond just the notes on the page. I mean, well composed, we can all agree with that, but it's that collaboration effect and working with those other musicians, that I think, if several people have mentioned this, when we do all get to play really together again, what a joyous moment that's going to be, and to congregate.
I had 3 gigs, and it was put together. It was like super safe. We were playing for like assisted living communities, and this was a couple weeks ago. And the pianist and I, in the first tune, we were just laughing because it was like, this is so weird. Like, this is awesome, and this is exactly why we do what we do. Like, and it's so refreshing to like actually get to do that with, I play along with records all day, but to do it with another person and like just actually like, be in that same space is like, it's awesome. It's incredible. And
we'll get there, and we'll get there. I think, for everyone who's feeling frustrated right now, we are going to get there, and we get to have it as a marker for what we can compare everything else to, and we'll get through it, and then we hopefully will be more grateful on the other end of it, and maybe work a little harder to support and enjoy the things that are going on in our lives. That's my hope, certainly. We'll see. History will tell a version of it. But we will get there. I mean, inevitably.
Interesting, because everybody talks about all the interesting art that's going to happen with all these artists locked down, and probably that's true. But I think, like you're saying, like when it's not locked down and we can be in the same space together, and there's just that joy of we're doing this. Like, this is what we used to take for granted. And I think that's where there's going to be some amazing art created.
Some folks have been actively trying to broaden the scope. And one of these things, I mean, this has been an intense change. It's not a subtle change, right? It's an intense change from what it was to what it is, that it may help to kind of recalibrate larger portions. So as opposed to little pockets trying to be inclusive, larger portions are going to be like, oh, actually, this is the time. We have to adapt. Let's do this, and let's take advantage of the time, right?
All you have to know is that the Washington Redskins are going to change their name. Like, it finally is happening. About 100 years too late, but it's happening. Like, that's a big deal.
Just a larger awareness than just the individual, it shows like, okay, there's a definite community need and an impact, and we have to lead by example.
And like, my neighborhood here was completely boarded up, and the protests, and how peaceful it was and how awesome it was. Like, just being in the city and experiencing that, like, it's, I can't see how it won't lead to positive change, but I could be wrong.
We do. My fear is that we tend to have a short attention span. My optimism is that since we are here in the situation we are in, we can't really get distracted by anything else right now. So our vision is sort of forced to take measure of what's going on, as opposed to, like, if we were just living our lives, you'd have several concerts, this weekend and next weekend and the weekend after and the weekend after, and you'd be touring and planning and doing all these things, right? So you as the individual would have all sorts of things to keep your mind busy and distracted.
Not to mention the people who have had no choice but to be focused on this first. I have friends in various degrees of all of that stuff. Some friends that have been very sick, some students that have been very sick. So, my good friend in Belgium said, there will be a time after all of this.
Here's what we're going to take away from all this, though. First, you're Chad McCullough. Folks that are just going to meet you on stage or hear your records, they're just going to hear this incredible musician. And maybe after they see a little bit of conversation, they can hear where some of those notes come from, because we can all just play the notes, or we can live through those notes. And as one of my greatest friends, here's someone who plays and listens with the passion and understanding of what it took to make those notes happen. And then you have the respect and the self-discipline to become an ambassador for that music as a performer and as a speaker and as an educator. And I think the fact that you're able to give so much to all these different pockets of populations is an incredible gift. And I'm very grateful and thankful to just have randomly run into you in a biology class at University of Idaho, and that I've been able to see your impact grow from our time at the Lionel Hampton School of Music to now, and seeing all that you're doing. When people are looking for albums, I'm going to be directing them to your website, chadmccullough.com. The new album is called Forward, and when you hear Chad play, you get to hear everything that he has to offer. And 5 years ago, when I was in Chicago visiting, getting to see what you do, it's tremendous to hear it live. Your records get played at my house, and my kids run around dancing to them. I have done my best to make them clap only on 1 and 3, but I think your albums have corrupted them to enjoy beats 2 and 4. So I fundamentally failed as a father. But thank you so much for all that you're doing, and reminding all of us that together we're better, and that we should always be our best selves. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad McCullough.